told my mom and my grandma, put all the bills in my name. I just signed with the WWF. Boom. There's a punch right in the back of my head. Shirt over the face and...
Welcome back to Tales from the Attitude Era. I am your host, Rob Pasbani, joined as always by the former head writer of WWE from 99 to 2001, Tommy Blacha. And today we have a very, very special guest. The Blue Meanie is joining us. I'm so excited to have Philadelphia's favorite son, the Blue Meanie, on the podcast.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. I've been watching, been enjoying the show, and when you invited me on, I was so excited.
Oh, me too. I've been a fan of all things Meanie for a long time. Through the years, we've sent each other stupid text messages, often just non sequiturs that mean nothing. But one of my favorite guys ever, and I encourage anyone out there to go down the Meanie rabbit hole, because it's so fascinating. Because when you look at everything, if you scour the internet about the Blue Meanie, Brian Heffron, it doesn't add up to this like friendly guy sitting there. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's so much stuff. It's like, and I also tried, we some things we never talked about that I kind of looked at. Like, I tried to start a promotion too that went that I don't even talk about because there was tax problems. You tried to start a promotion that had all kinds of problems, which 90% of promotions do. But just your whole circuitous route of this like friendly kid altar boy from Philadelphia, and just like when you read it on paper, like, what has this guy gotten into? And this violent thing, and JBL, and then this, and then Jasmine St. Clair, who she used to be on the metal scene all the time, and she was also part of this promotion. And you just read it on paper, you're like, this. If I was in court or deposition, this is the guy. He seems so nice. He's just like all this stuff, all across the independent big pro wrestling landscape. So a super fascinating character, and I'm so happy to see you here. You just look like you haven't aged, and you're all on paper you should have been dead a couple times maybe.
Yeah, I made several sacrifices to the Dark Lord that has kept me youthful, but
it's worked.
Well, Wade Keller once called me the Forrest Gump of wrestling, just because I've been on hand for so many different things that have happened in wrestling, whether, some, crazy events, whether it's being in ECW or WWE. I was like, oh yeah, I was there. Yeah. How have you been at all these things? And it's just like, just been the onlooker, but it's been very fortunate, man, that, in 2024, I'm still here, some kind of form, talking pro wrestling with you. You were always very kind to me in WWE. You're one of the few writers that, would come up and just, shoot the shit and just, talk. And I remember one time in Pittsburgh, you're like, yeah, we're just trying to think of something to do for you. And you're like one of the few guys that let me know that, Vince likes you. He's just trying to figure out Meanie's a good guy. We just got to figure out what to do with him,
Yeah. And, you're right. And it's a constant theme of doing this show and reliving all this stuff is just, always trying to tell people the fucking pace of what was happening then, and the thing was blowing up. And that was the hard part of the job, is you're always like, what a successful thing. Fuck, what do we do with this guy? And also, what are we doing? We talk about Austin can't work tonight. He hurt his neck. Fuck, all hands on deck to do all this kind of insane creative problem solving. And you just, and you have Monday Night Raw, you have a pay-per-view, Monday Night Raw, SmackDown. You don't have a chance to let it resonate and make these plans. It's just going. Everything's hot-shotting constantly. And you know what I mean? So that was kind of like, one of those things, and you try to put people in positions, and if they go, they go. And sometimes you're pushing something, and for whatever reason, Vince, no, but, so there was always, so many discussions about possible things to do. And sometimes it's almost a drag to be like, like there was the Midian thing, but I was always like, yeah, Meanie should, kind of pushing that like APA intern, and things that I wouldn't really like divulge to you, because it'd be like, oh, that's great. No, fuck. Yeah. It's not happening. And so, just, and I would always try to learn to pitch to Vince and be like, wouldn't it be great to, you hear Ron Simmons, Blue Meanie, what the fuck is that? And then I like him, he's weird, or, just trying to make these connections quickly, in a breakfast meeting and then like off to this thing, off to that thing, like, okay, put a pin in that, so you're just not enough hours to, do everything. That's why sometimes I was like Sunday Night Heat at the time to gravitate towards like, oh, there's less pressure on this or that, and also, part of it, you had such the little run before with all kinds of stuff. So it's kind of like, how do you not get the diminishing returns of something else weird? And, so it was always like, maybe, pitching things, he should be mad about not taking seriously. That was also a theme I tried to like put in. And, just a lot of things stop and start. So you gotta like, wrestling's such a fucking weird business like that. Cause it's not just like actors plugging into a script. It's timing. People are there to be, lucky, put in that position. And so, there's always like, you got to look at it like, wow, I can't believe I got that. And fuck, it could have been this. So it's just, that's the biz, I guess.
Oh, absolutely. It's funny. You mentioned Sunday Night Heat, and that's kind of one of the reasons why I got hired was WWE was expanding their TV. They added the show Sunday Night Heat, and they're going to need more talent to be on these other shows. And Vince Russo had reached out to Al Snow, knowing that Al had trained me. And I come home. I worked an independent show in Pittsburgh. I drive home. There's a voicemail from Al on my answer machine. Meanie, when you get a chance, give me a call. Okay, I give him a call. He goes, so Meanie, are you under contract to Paul? I went, nope. He's like, if there was, just an opportunity to maybe work for WWE, would you do it? I went, yep. And
well, he said F at the time, but
yeah. We got the F in, pal. I was like, WWE, WWF, yep. And it's like, okay, call you right back. Maybe a half hour, 45 minutes later, Bruce.
That's cruel.
Yeah,
call you right back. What the fuck?
I'm sitting in my living room, like next to the phone, like, the guy behind the tree. Yeah. Whatever that meme is. And then Bruce Pritchard calls. Hey, Brian, I need your Social Security, this, that, and the other thing. I'm like, cool. And then he's like, all right, be at the building Sunday. It's 11 a.m. or whatever, because they were doing a split building that day with the Philadelphia Flyers. So Heat was in the day and the game was at night. And I was like, all right. And it just took off from there. I tried calling, ECW. I tried calling Paul. And, Paul's, hard to get reach on the phone. But I eventually talked to Tommy Dreamer. Well, let me backtrack. I called my tag partner, Mike Bucci, Supernova, who wanted to be on Simon Dean and WWE. I was like, hey, man, WWE just called. And he was like, do it, man. And he was so supportive, which was super cool. And because he was heading down to the Florida shows, and I had a feeling something was up because my travel hadn't been booked. So I think they might have been tipped off that I was going to. So who knows? You never know.
You never know.
But that weekend, I'm just hanging out, waiting, at home, waiting to debut for WWE on a Sunday. And then a Saturday night, Nova calls me, and he's in the locker room at ECW, and he's passing the phone to everybody. Everybody in the ECW locker room congratulated me.
Nice.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah. Like Tommy Rich got on the phone. Meanie, congratulations. Balls Mahoney got on the phone. Meanie, Fonzie, yo, daddy, congratulations. So,
well, I gotta say, I hope someone cleaned that phone off when it was over. Jesus,
it's a little muffled from the condom that you put over the phone. But
yeah, well, that's great. You'd have to, like, if if someone isn't supportive of that happening, they have a character flaw.
Yeah,
really.
I've talked to Nova, and then I talked to Dreamer, who picked up the phone. Because Paul wouldn't pick up his phone. I'm not saying that in a bad way. Just Paul's notorious for being bad on.
Well, I'll just say this: Paul's probably like, "Do I owe him money?"
Yeah.
I'll put that joke.
I don't have a FedEx in front of me doing it.
Yeah. Why does he want to talk to me? I think I've paid him.
Yeah. But Dreamer's like, Meanie, you're going to go, you have a good time, you do what you have to do. I was like, that's all I needed to hear. And, I show up Sunday and, that Sunday and, everybody greeted me. It was pretty cool. Like first guys I, saw were Edge and Christian. And I have a funny story. Me and Paul Bearer had like a relationship, friendship, before, I went to WWE, like this is like the AOL days, Instant Messenger. And I don't know how we got
Yeah.
connected, but we would always talk on like Instant Messenger. And I show up and he's sitting with the production guys and they're putting together Gangrel's set because since they don't have the stage set up and he can't come through the thing, they're doing this candle thing and melting candles.
Right. And what year was this? Just to say,
98.
Right.
November 98. And I go, hey, Uncle Paul. I call him Uncle Paul or Uncle Percy. And he turns to the guy and goes, me and Meanie been friends for a long time. Only guy never asked me for a job. so, so I think he appreciated that. I talked to him for all these years and then never went, hey, man, you think you can get me in? Kind of thing. So, but that was just a magical day. Because I debuted for WWE in my hometown of Philly at the Wells Fargo, whatever it was called then, First Union Center, which everybody called the FU Center. And then to just debut in front of my hometown fans and friends who were like, why didn't you tell me? And I was like, I can't, but, and then that was the beginning of my journey into this, 2 years with the WWE. And, it allowed me to do some really cool things and, support the people who, took care of me. Because, growing up, most wrestlers go, I paid my dues, but families pay dues as well. And after I got off the phone with Bruce Pritchard, I walked 10 feet from my bedroom to the living room. I told my grandmom and my mom and my grandmom, put all the bills in my name. They're like, what? Put all the bills in my name. They're like, why? I was like, I just signed with the WWF. And my grandmom like clutched the chair next door. My mom was
That's awesome.
My mom's like Edith Bunker. And, just I was like, yeah, put all the bills in my name. And for the next 2 years, they didn't have to lift a finger for anything. And I got to pay back the debt they, put out, helping me with my my wrestling hobby or interest, or whatever you want to call it. They've let me go off and play wrestler, and now it paid off, and I was able to pay them back.
That's sweet. That should be like, you have a movie like The Wrestler that looks at the horrible underbelly of independent wrestling, but there should be one that should be the sweet moment, of an alternative movie, or that it's like, put the bills in my name. That's the good side, that's a tremendous story. And one thing I always wanted to ask you, I scoured through everything, how did you get into it? Like you went from Philadelphia to Ohio to train. Is that correct?
Well, my story is I was born in Philly. And when I was 2 years old, my family moved to a small town across the river called Gloucester City, New Jersey. And, it was me, my mom, and my sister. And then my grandparents moved in. And it was a little tough for my mom as a single parent to raise both me and my sister is 8 years older than me. So she's a little bit more self-reliant. Once I became like right around when I was 10, my grandparents were like, look, we'll help raise Brian. And my grandparents moved off to Atlantic City. They took me with them and moved to Atlantic City, lived there from 83 to 94. So we lived there for about 11 years. But in the meantime, when we lived in Gloucester City, I had a friend next door named Sean. And I would go over to my friend Sean. I go, Sean, hey, there's a Phillies game coming on. You want to come over and watch the Phillies game? He's like, I can't. I'm watching wrestling. I went, the hell's wrestling? I'm 8. I'm like, or I'm 7 or 8, whatever. And he's like, oh, well, I was like, well, come over to my house. We'll watch wrestling at my house. And we watched it, and that was it. That was the bug that bit me. And I'm sure I watched the whole hour, but the only match I remember is Tony Garea and Rick Martel losing the WWF tag belts to Fuji and Saito. And
Wow.
I was like, this is amazing. And I watched every week. And growing up as I grew up a severe asthmatic, and I really couldn't participate in all the other kids' reindeer games. And I'm telling my family I want to do that, and they're like, that's cute, because I couldn't play. I was allergic to everything. In high school football, I tried out for the football team. I was allergic to the field because I'm allergic to grass, so I have asthma attacks. But pro wrestling was something I always wanted to do, and I always thought about, visualized, conceptualized, and saw myself doing. And it wasn't until we moved to Atlantic City. I went to Atlantic City High School. I met a buddy named Justin, and he turned me on to like the wrestling newsletter scenes because I had just been an aftermath guy.
Right.
So I learned this insider news and all this stuff. And then through Wrestling Observer, I learned about wrestling schools. And I was going to go to there's a point where I almost went to the Malenko Wrestling Academy in Tampa.
Oh,
right.
So after I graduated high school, I worked in the casinos. I saved all my money. I'd take my paycheck, half would go to the house, half would go to a sock drawer for tuition. Pay the bills.
Oh, just transpose this. This is the new independent wrestling movie script right here.
Yeah.
Everything's just
Yeah.
You're being so responsible too.
The asthmatic, as a lot of great athlete, Bass Rutten. There's a lot of great athletes that overcome asthma
I didn't even know that. No.
Yeah. Bass Rutten was a severe asthmatic as a kid. The sickly kid who overcomes it. So.
Dude, every fall and every spring, I would spend like a week and a half in the hospital.
Wow.
They would have to put an oxygen tent over my bed. I would have IV going into my hand, pumping me full of prednisone. And that was almost every year until I was, maybe 11. And then
wow,
my regular doctor recommended me to a lung specialist in Margate, New Jersey, a doctor named Dr. Hugo Altamirano. And he got me properly diagnosed and got me on proper meds. They did that thing where they take your arm and they prick little holes in it, and then they do little droplets.
Right.
Whatever you react to, that's your allergy. And they got me on the right medicine. So, maybe my senior year, I started actually feeling like I can do stuff.
Wow. So you didn't play sports at all. This hampered you?
No.
Wow.
In my sophomore, I was thinking about joining a wrestling team because I wanted to be a pro wrestler, of course.
Right.
And my high school, Atlantic City High School, got rid of the wrestling program my sophomore year. I went, son of a bitch, there's no grass in here. I could do this, But I wanted to do that. But, just wrestling was just always in high school, I was the wrestling guy. If I showed you my yearbook, my teachers were like, good luck in WWE, because that's all I ever talked about. It's what I wanted to do.
So when did you go to the wrestling school? How old?
I was going to go to Malenko's, but I went to Al's. I was 20 years old.
Wow. So you had not been really physical your life, right?
No.
So you're going, part of the time-honored tradition of wrestling schools is weed people out. I know, but it's not as vicious as like Ole Anderson and like just breaking your arm or whatever. But
Hiro Matsuda.
Yeah. But
it's funny because my trainer Al Snow tried out with the Andersons in North Carolina, and they beat the crap out of him. So,
yeah, and he came back, so it's like, okay, it's kind of one of those like 10 guys, one came back. Oh, okay, still beat the shit out of you, or whatever.
I was so fortunate to find Al.
Yeah,
I was going to go to Malenko's, and I had saved up a couple grand, and I wrote to Malenko's to correspond, and a woman named Phyllis Lee replied, and she had like amazing handwriting. I was like, who is this woman? And spectacular handwriting. So we were back when there was pen pals, no emails, write letters back and forth. And then we started talking. In blind faith, I sent this woman a couple grand towards tuition.
Wow.
And then she told me, how much it costs to live there in Tampa. I was like, ooh, that's a little stiff. And we're talking, and she knew I was teetering. She's like, well, have you heard of Al Snow? I was like, I started reading about him in the newsletters because he's having a really good feud with Sabu at the time. And I said, I've heard of him. He's like, well, he has a school in Ohio, same tuition, but you get to live in the school because it's an old Masonic temple and there's like living quarters and stuff like that. It's like, all right, I'll do that.
Yep. The sweet Midwest.
Yes. In Lima, Ohio, which I saw a shirt when I lived in Lima. It said Lima, lost in mid-America. So there was a moment where it was, shit or get off the pot moment. And I was still working at casinos and my mom was working there too. And we're walking to catch the shuttle.
What were you doing at the casinos?
Security.
Nice.
I worked at Trump Plaza. I worked overnight shift, which meant I worked with all the pro wrestling types.
So you were at 20. You were big, right?
Yeah, I was always big.
Yeah.
Yeah. My grandma would, you have broad shoulders. 'Cause I'm so, I was born, my hands were like this. They're like, you look like you came out of the womb looking like you're ready to fight,
Well, that what Arn Anderson would call raw bone.
Yes.
You grab someone's wrist and you know right away whether they're raw bone or not. you're raw bone.
So we were walking to the shuttle to go to work, and we were standing at a red light waiting to cross the street. And I go, you know what? I'm going to go in tonight and give my 2 weeks. I'm going to wrestling school. And my mom went, okay.
And hold on, that's where the show cuts to commercial, and then we'll come back. So to get the viewers like, oh, he's going to the wrestling school.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
I went in that night, gave my 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks later, the day after WrestleMania 10, I loaded up my car and drove to Lima, Ohio to train with Al Snow.
Oh, nice. I don't give a shit. I'm going for every detail. What kind of fucking car was it?
It was a 78 Dodge Aspen, which looked like
fuck yes, it was.
it looked like an unmarked cop car. So I really didn't get parking tickets because it was white. Oh. And my friend Justin, his stepdad was a Lang CPD and gave me a little patch to throw on the hood of the dashboard. So if I park somewhere, somebody walk up and see the patch, go, oh, that's a cop. And
nice. So if I had a whole room of writers, it'd be like, okay, let's pitch on what kind of car we'd have. Someone would be like, how about like a Dodge Aspen? Shit, yeah, right.
It was the smoothest ride I ever had. It felt like I was driving a cruise ship. Just wheels. You hit a bump, you just float.
Yeah.
Wide seat. And it was the perfect car. But I'm driving out to Ohio, and my alternator dies in Columbus, Ohio, and nice. Windshield wiper flies off in Wheeling, West Virginia. And I'm like, son of a bitch.
Had you even been out of the East Coast?
No.
Wow. Even better.
The furthest I'd been away from home was New York City. And I was going to go see my friend's band play at the Limelight. And
goodness.
Another sidebar, I'd become friends with the guy guitar player who used to be in the Black Crowes named Jeff Cease. And he joined a band in Philly called Black Eyed Susan, and we became pen pals. And I went to see him and became friendly. I was like, yeah, tomorrow we're playing the Limelight. Can I come? Yeah, sure. And me and my friends drove to New York, and it's like, the big adventure in the city. I'm staring at everything. I was like, I gotta go to the Hard Rock. I gotta see Eddie Van Halen's guitar. And I got my photo with Eddie Van Halen's.
That's when the Limelight was in the big church on like 5th Street or 5th Avenue. Yeah. And
that was amazing. I watched my friend's band, which was Black Eyed Susan, and then I saw the band, Andre you remember the first season of The Real World, Andre?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
I saw his band play Rain Dance, which is like weird. I was like, I'd just seen him on The Real World, and now I'm watching him play. And met Kirk Hammett from Metallica that night, who was just hanging out and stuff. But
nice.
That was my first time out of that's my first journey away that wasn't Philly or Atlantic City.
Classic.
Yeah. Driving to 13 hours to Ohio, which I thought was like, I'll make it there in 4. And then not realizing how wide both states are, I was like, 13 hours later, son of a bitch.
Wow. So you pull into Lima.
Now I'd never been away from home. I didn't know how long I was going to be away. So I packed every piece of my room into my car And then like when I'm getting my alternator fixed in Columbus, Ohio, I'm like peeking out the window every half hour, make sure nobody's stealing my car because I literally everything I own's in there, all my VHS tapes. And so next day I go to Lima.
You brought your VHS tape.
Oh yeah,
Got to study.
3 crates of VHS and milk crates. Just
Oh yeah.
later on they would be part of to hold my mattress up. I put my mattress on a bunch of milk crates with my VHS.
Classic.
Yeah, I was a slob. So I get to Lima, and mind you, I never saw Al. I read about Al Snow,
Right.
and I'd never seen him. So I go in, and his school's like maybe a 6 or 7 story building. He had the top 2 floors. I get off the elevator, and I go, "Hey, I'm looking for Al Snow." He goes, "Hi, I'm Al. I'm leaving. I gotta go pick up some padding for the gym." So he was driving up to Michigan to get padding for the ring from Dan Severn up in Michigan. So it was
Cold water.
Yeah, it was like hi and bye, and I got to hang out with the rest of the students, which was interesting, and they helped me unload my car, which took about 6 or 7 trips.
That's funny.
They're like, "You still got stuff in there?" Yeah. So and that was interesting. There's a guy.
Any other notable students?
Well, Dan Severn. I trained with Dan.
I didn't know that Al trained at Dan. Oh wow.
Yeah, but Al seconded him in some of the early UFCs, I think, and they all were. Yeah.
Dan came to our
wow.
school.
I never knew that.
Dan came to our school to train for that UFC, and I was basically his suplex dummy. Just
oh, nice.
Nothing like being choked out by Dan Severn with your own arm, and he goes, "Are you trying to fight back?" Just yeah, Dan. Yeah, I am trying to fight back. Thanks for rubbing that in.
That guy's well, first of all, just a little put a pin in this now, like Al Snow, one of the greatest, nicest guys ever, you know what I mean? And meeting him, he was one of the first guys, like when I went to WWF at the time, whatever, like, oh, Al Snow, and and just talked to him, and I was like, oh, he's just easygoing, it doesn't seem to change, and whatever. And Dan Severn, just I'm from Detroit. I'm a Michigan native, so I have a lot of Dan Severn pride. But like, what a weirdo! He doesn't. Now you see him 10,000 brutal fights, and it's like, well, his eyebrows are a little gray, and his mustache is a little gray. It's like the same fucking guy.
Yeah,
insane.
He's like if Freddie Mercury turned into the Hulk.
Yeah.
Well,
did you ever hear Tank Abbott when talking the one fight that he just couldn't do anything against Severn, and then he was on the mic with someone later UFC, and when Tank Abbott with his full madness, and they said like, "Yeah, you lost that fight." He goes, "I don't remember that." And he's like what? He goes, "I remember being raped by Freddie Mercury for a half hour." It's just like, oh.
There's a lot of guys who came out of school who could have made it. There's a guy, Steve Nixon, who was really good. Jimmy V, who went on to do some stuff in the Indies, and he became this like fitness guru, and he was coaching guys on the Biggest Loser show.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's a lot of guys who came through that actually went on to have really good indie careers, and people who I thought Steve Nixon would have been an excellent cruiserweight, but that it's the way that's just the way life takes you. I think if he had lived on the East Coast, he would have got noticed a little bit quicker.
And wrestling's such a weird thing because it's not like athletics per se, where it's like, oh, you run this fast, you're going to be in the Olympics. You know what I mean? There's guys that, because it's this combination of opportunity, you're an actor, and then do you have the wherewithal to stick it out? And then I'm sure a lot of people go through a school and kind of like figure like, I don't think I really want to do this, maybe, and not in a bad way, even like you said, like maybe that guy that became a fitness guru, like, yeah, that's more my style. I don't know if I want to go through the ups and downs, because wrestling's so odd. There's so many characters that are successful that are like, that person's fucked up. They got a real character flaw, and then whatever levels, and then there's just charming, wonderful guys that like you fit into that category. So
speaking of characters, I at the school, there's a guy named Ray the Crippler Roberts. Ray Roberts. They gave him the name Ray the Crippler. And he had to be in his 40s then.
Wow.
Hair pulled back into ponytail, beard, total Yinzer from Pittsburgh area. And like he had done time in prison.
Nice.
And you'd be talking to him and we're driving to go get lunch. I was like, yeah, the restaurant straight over there. He's like, man, I never go straight. I always go forward. Because in prison, going straight means you go legit. I never go straight, man. I just go forward. But for some reason, he got super over. And he's working for it. There's a promotion, Midwest Territorial Wrestling by Gary Warrencheck. And Ray wore like a singlet and long tights with like a white hoodie underneath it. And that's what was Gary. But he would come out to Ted Nugent's Stranglehold and he'd wear the Oakley blades and he had silly string. And like the crowd would go ape shit for him. To where like he's selling like tons of T-shirts and this, that. And he got over in, you know, Detroit, Pittsburgh and all that stuff. And he was just like that's a guy you could do a movie about. You know, he was such a character. And he would book me. He booked me on shows out in. He's from Newcastle, Pennsylvania, and
yeah, the mystery of getting over. That's what I tell people. It's like I think a good analogy is like hit songs. You know, bands are like, fuck, this was a throwaway song. We fucking hate it. Huge. And here's the song we worked on. Boo. You know, it's pretty similar in a lot of ways that like, you know, it's lightning in a bottle. It isn't an exact formula, you know, and just like, yeah, you're right.
I just read, I just watched a video.
From one of your crates? Was it one of those old videos?
No. It was the story about the song The Final Countdown by the band Europe.
Yeah.
And that song was a throwaway song.
Sure.
It was just a piece of like an instrumental they used to walk to the stage to. Somebody was like,
and it's a fucking ridiculous song, and it's about like
nuclear
war.
We're going to Venus, Venus.
Yeah, it's just like
maybe she'll welcome us all. Who? What?
Yeah. Well, the greatest of all time, Paranoid Sabbath. Like, we need one more. I don't know. You know, Paranoid. Like, on the spot. Okay, here, and then, you know, their biggest song of all time.
Amazing.
You know? Yeah.
Yeah. But Ray Roberts got over, and it's just like, you know, he's one of the students that got over huge, and you don't know why. It's just, but it happens, and it's just, I think in wrestling, it's all about connections and just right place, right time. Like if I hadn't said my mom, I'm leaving in 2 weeks to go wrestle, if I waited an extra day, who knows what would happen. If I didn't go to Al Snow's, then I couldn't have met Sabu, and Sabu start running shows. Sabu start putting me on his shows, and then there's a show Sabu ran that had Paul Heyman on it, Tommy Dreamer, and Taz. And they needed a match. You know, Sabu would do a run-in on like one random match just to get the crowd fired up and lay everybody out. And they needed a match where there's going to be a stipulation, like somebody gets their head shaved. And I was like one of the few guys to go, oh, sure, shave my head, right?
Yeah.
So we have our match, and we're acting like we don't want to get our head shaved. And Sabu and Paul Heyman run out, beat the crap out of us, shave our heads. So when I go to ECW, and Paul's looking at me like, you look familiar. I was like, well, you shaved my head in Michigan. You're the kid. And you know, if I hadn't told my mom I was leaving, I hadn't gone to Al, hadn't worked for Sabu hadn't, and Paul didn't shave my head when I got to ECW, Paul realized this kid's willing to do whatever it takes for pro wrestling. So just a series of events, you know, like the movie Sliding Doors, you know, you catch the train, this thing happens. You miss the train, that thing happens, kind of thing.
Well, and also, you know, you put yourself over. I put it that way. You know, no one really, that's true what you say, but no one, I think, for me, if I could be so bold as to examine why you got over with me totally in just, you know, past or whatever, is like, you fit that mold of like that in between kind of like, this guy's like not typical and he's not threatening, yet he can do it when you used to see you like, you know, make no mistake, like, oh, he's the big fat kid and he's fun, but it was like, holy fuck, he can work. And oh my God, look at the top rope, you know, the moonsault. Holy, you know what I mean? Those things where you can't just be humor. That has its, you know, even people, I always tell non-wrestling people like, yeah, Playboy Buddy Rose, ha ha ha. Yeah. Fucking smart off to him in a bar, you know. Like, so you got that aspect, but you know what I mean. It's got that, you know. It's kind of that thing where like push this guy, ha ha. Oh fuck, no. You know, there's just a dynamic that sometimes you can't even explain, but it's like exactly why one of the biggest judges, Meanie. You know, you know, there's a likability that there's like an honesty or something that's like, oh, this guy's not putting on airs. You know what I mean? That thread, that shit comes through, you know, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And, you know, you're talking about like the body type. I think if I had any other body type, I probably wouldn't have made it ECW because that's what I got noticed for. I was doing a show in Pittsburgh. Yeah, I got to give a shout out to promoter Norm Connors, who was like one of the first promoters to use me outside of Al Snow's bubble. And I'd done 3 shows, one in Maryland, West Virginia, and Pittsburgh. I'm working on a show, and all 3 of those shows, Stevie Richards and Raven were on those shows. So Pittsburgh show, you know, I have a match with a local legend who's doing a Batman gimmick. Like he was the local doink. He was the local veteran who would like
the local doink. Just love that.
The local doink.
Hey, who's that guy? Oh, he's a local doink. Fucking doink, the interchangeable yeah, even more so. Tertiary local doink. Incredible.
And he would like have a merch table of everybody else's merch, you know, from WWE.
Oh, I want a T-shirt that says local doink.
Make it happen. But he's like, hey kid, the more they pay me, the more I bump. I'm not taking too many bumps tonight. I was like, all right, great. So, but Raven and Stevie watched that match, and the next day at lunch, they're like, you know, Raven goes, hey, we got this idea. Stevie's my lackey, but we won't have this big fat guy wearing Stevie's lackey dressed like Stevie. You know, we have a guy in mind, but he's not a wrestler. He can't wrestle. And the guy, I know who they're talking about. The guy made me look small. But, hey, we watched your match. Yeah, you do that moonsault and stuff. What you want to do? I was like, why be in ECW? They're like, yeah. But you'll have to wear a half shirt and Daisy Dukes, but I'll be in ECW, right? And they're like, yeah. I was like, all right, fine.
Yeah.
And then later on,
the half shirts and the Daisy Dukes fucking worked for you, you know, and yeah.
I don't know if I would have looked like, you know, Charles Atlas and, you know, wore regular gear. Who knows if I would have been noticed? You know, just, you know, the thing that, you know, was supposedly my detriment, being a fat kid from fat as mad kid from Atlantic City, actually kind of paid off and got me noticed for.
Well, to me, that's one of the things often in wrestling a lot is that people like the self-exploitation and the you know, everyone has a body fetish. It's a fan of wrestling or strippers or whatever, but that when you see someone that has that, you know, the wherewithal to let it all fucking hang out, you know, and then do shit, it's weirdly empowering, you know, to people. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, you know, there's something about that when you have other people who are handsome are so like, oh fuck, how do I look? And someone's like, just lets it hang out. It's, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I like them, you know. It's like it's a character, you know. It's integrity in a bizarre way, you know. For me,
I got to a point in my life I was like, there's nothing anybody else can do to me. I haven't do or say to me that I haven't done to myself. You know, Seth. You know, I'm big on self-deprecating humor. You know, that's always been my defense mechanism. So, like, if somebody say something, make a joke. I'll joke about myself. That lets them know that whatever they can say to me can't hurt me because I'm saying it about myself.
So you built those calluses by being asthmatic. By being
I was bullied as a kid a lot, and just, you know,
that was the
other kid. You know, I was a fat kid with a single mom who couldn't do anything, so a lot of the kids would pick on me, beat me up, and stuff like that.
Wow.
But
so he's a fat kid with a single mom, and he's asthmatic. But now he's the Blue Meanie.
How were you christened the Blue Meanie? Where did that come from? Obviously, it's from the Yellow Submarine, but how were you linked to it?
That was totally Raven, man. Not the show Totally Raven, but Scott Levy, the wrestler Raven, came up with the character. After Norm's show, we went. We tried out me as Stevie's lackey on the Indies. Half shirt Daisy Dukes wrestling. At the time, my wrestling name was Brian Rollins, which half Brian, half Ron, half Henry Rollins kind of thing.
Right.
And I debuted for ECW,
which no one would connect in a million years because Rollins just
yeah, he's ripped, but I debuted for ECW October '95. That footage got destroyed because that was the night of the fire incident between Terry Funk and Cactus Jack, and there was a lawsuit and stuff. So that debut went away. So in the meantime, we went back out to work for Norm, and we're driving back from that show in a blizzard. And Raven's like, "Hey, did you ever see the Yellow Submarine?" I was like, "Yeah, when I was a kid." Yeah, remember the Blue Meanie character? I was like, "Yeah, vaguely, because it would be on like TV when I was a kid."
Sure.
And he's like, "You're going to be the Blue Meanie. You're going to love it." And he's trying to pitch it hard on me. He's like, "You're going to love it. You're going to want to paint your whole body blue, but just do your hair for now." I was like, "But I'll be in ECW, right?" He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "All right."
That's the best things happen because it just makes no sense in the most wonderful way. And also in the time-honored tradition of old school wrestling, which cracks me up, it's not like based on anything. They just straight rip it off like, the Road Warriors. You see that movie, The Road Warriors? Yeah, what do we call ourselves? The Road Warriors. Every Sting. Oh, Sting. Hey, that guy in the police, that's a big, his name's Sting. What do I call? How about Sting? They just like, there's so much shit from that era that's just like, I'm based on the Blue Meanie, so what will my name be? The Blue Meanie.
Yes. Yeah, I was always like, I was one of those indie guys who's like, "Oh man, I built up this name. I named him at nothing at the time."
Yeah.
But I'm Brian Rollins. Can I be the Blue Meanie Brian Rollins? No, you'll just be the Blue Meanie. Like, all right. Yeah. But we got home. Went to Raven's place and went to sleep. Woke up, went to Buster, got the Yellow Submarine, and we watched we rented the DVD, watched it, and then Raven would sit there and have me stand in the middle of the living room and have cut promos like the Blue Meanie. Blue Meanie, do a promo on toilet paper, do a promo on this, that, and I would in character like I had just watched on TV. Those,
yeah.
Later on, as time went on, the character went away from that Blue Meanie. They became more of a amplification of myself.
Right. As things naturally do. Yeah, you remember, it's like everything, like you even look at whatever, The Simpsons. You remember if you watch the first couple Simpsons, like, why does Homer act like that? It just becomes like, okay, this works, dial his thing down. But that is, the Blue Meanie is such a weird, from the movie, it's just such a weird thing. Yeah, because I remember used to do like that a lot. Yeah. But it's so smart because I can imagine so many people, especially as the years go on, they're like, "Oh, that's great. That's based on a cartoon from the Beatles, huh?" Never mind. It doesn't matter.
That's the thing. I would always go, people, why not the Red Meanie? Like, I don't know. Just you would get that question so often, you would just make up answers. My eyes are blue. I don't know.
And also they said they want you to do a moonsault. That was also ECW that kind of pushed that on you.
No, the moonsault was something I had always wanted to do.
Let's time out one sec because I'm intrigued with. So you're this kid who hasn't been physical, hasn't really played sports, and you go to save your money and you go to a wrestling school. Most of the story should end there. Most people should be like, and then after 6 hours, he limped to his Dodge Aspen and drove off a cliff. You know what I mean? Like, how did you know what I mean? The physicality of that, you found yourself to be a natural athlete, or this was a whole physical and kind of spiritual awakening, I imagine? A 20-year-old not being physical, not having a background in sports? Like, talk a little bit about that.
I attribute all that to Al Snow. To go back to my childhood, finding a doctor, get my lungs strong, and just being able to start doing things. For one example is when we got to Al's, I went to Al's school, there was a moment where a board broke in the ring, and we had to go to like Home Depot and get the board for the ring. And there's like a couple of us, going up the steps, try to get this board up the ring, and we're all sucking wind. It's like 6 stories, and we're like, trying to drink water. It just goes down your fucking shirt.
Yeah.
Flash forward maybe 2 months later, another board breaks, but this time it's just me and Al going to get to the store, and we're going up the store, and we're going up at a pretty good rate. And Al stops and looks and goes, "Notice something?" I was like, "What?" He's like, You're not blown up." I went,
Yeah.
"Oh." And that was like an awakening moment. Like, just Al Snow not being a carny and stealing my money and just kicking me out.
Right.
But he took the time to say, "All right, here's point A, and you work on point A, and you don't go to point B until you get master point A, with bumps and stuff like that." So maybe a month and a half, 2 months out, I'm dropping weight and getting my cardio up, something I had never been able to do in my life. And I was only, because a doctor a couple of years ago got me on the right medicines for my asthma.
Right.
I wasn't having to rely on I used to have my inhaler on a lanyard around my neck. So
Fabulous.
like, oh shit,
Yeah.
I had to drill a hole in it. So I put the lanyard in, and I had my inhaler.
We'll get him with that inhaler gimmick, and then they steal it from you, and you're flopping around, and then you squirt the inhaler in their eyes.
Like
Look at the merchandising.
Like the fish from the Faith No More video. That's flopping around.
Like the fish from the Faith No More video, Vince. Huh? Never mind.
Is that a Perry Como song?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
But yeah, how did I go from being non-physical to physical? Is just Al believing in me. And, I was learning, the bumps. There was a point where I did the forward bump and just rolled out of the ring, went to the living room, just sat in a chair, just like, because like I kept hitting, instead of my feet landing flat, I would always keep hitting my heel, and it would jar my shins. And he came in and sat next to me. He goes, "All right, what's wrong?" I was like, "Can't get a stupid bump," and
right.
like, "All right, you're going to get this." And then he would have me try on the crash pad, so it didn't hurt as much. And then when I was comfortable, he'd pull the crash pad away and stuff like that. And just his persistence is why I was able to do it. If I had gone somewhere else, I don't know if I might have been able to do it.
Right. And then sometimes, I remember because similar reminds me of like being in the army. I was in the army. You see some like people not physical go through basic training and just almost transform. Like, I've never run, and their uniforms don't fit anymore, and they're, and sometimes things. I imagine you're kind of unmolded clay. You know what I mean? So you're not ever someone's going to be like, "Hey, I wrestled in high school and this and that," and like, no, you got to fucking do this step, and you were just like, it's probably, that probably worked for you.
And we had like somebody come in who was, I forget, from some kind of martial art. And that person was hard to train because they were so regimented in that one thing. It's like, no, you got to loosen up, man. You had to rewire their motherboard.
Yeah, because it's not always about effectiveness of punch physical. It's about the show, and it's about there's a whole it's half dancing and performing, and that kind of body movement. So yeah, that makes sense.
What Al Snow had to teach Dan Severn when it came to professional wrestling is, Dan was looking for the weakness and when to dive in and attack.
Right.
He had to teach Dan to lay back, let the guy sell,
right,
and let the moment breathe. Where like if Dan saw a weakness, he was like a bear. He was on you, and boom, 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 boom. He had to rewire him to teach him how to, back off and teach him to sell. Because when you're doing those, you can't show weakness.
Right. It's fascinating. I've always wondered. It's like Shamrock and Dan Severn. Has it ever fucked them in a real match? Like, oh, he's selling. Oh no, I'm in a real fuck. I could have had him, but he was just selling so good there.
Wrong brain.
Yeah, wrong brain.
But that's a good point.
So you got to ECW. And that was a great run. And then now you're in WWE. And one thing that Tommy told me was that you were there for the creative switchover from Russo to Tommy, and you kind of have like a little perspective on it, right?
Yeah, that was at the Meadowlands, and I show up, and I guess the boys said, I get to the building, I'm walking around, and a lot of the crew had just done a pay-per-view over in England. I forget what it was called, and they're all ribbing Christian, because Christian changed the finish of his match in the gorilla position before they went out. They're like, oh, Christian can't do the job, or something like that. He was supposed to work, I think, Crash Holly, and he changed the finish because his girlfriend's family was in the crowd or something like that, and they're just ribbing him about it. And then somebody was like, there's like, a couple of people who like had serious looks on their face, like, what's going on? They're like, yeah, Russo and Ed went to WCW. I was like, oh shit. And I wasn't like, oh shit, just because they were our head writers. I was like, oh shit, that probably means my time's coming up too, because I was a Russo hire,
right?
And I had learned from friends who were in the music business, whoever signed you to the music label, once they fire you, they get rid of all their bands, that person signed, So
well, it's like that in entertainment too.
Yeah.
The new president, like, we've been working on our pilot. The show's ready to go. He's gone. They hate you. Yeah.
So I heard Russo was going. I was like, it's like, well, it's been nice, and
right.
And then I'm trying to think of the first show I met you, but me and you just hit it off automatically,
Well, I remember. Yeah, and if you look at our other episode, that was the weirdest day because I was ready to it was such a vague, odd thing.
You were there that day, right? Or no?
Yeah, well, here's what happened. If I when I produced a thing for Vince at Conan, I was like leaving, and Vince said, like, you should come on down to some shows, and he paid me to consult, and I really wasn't like that kind of hire. I was like naively boobish to be like, okay, this is fun, but and then Russo was like, who the fuck is this guy? It was all very odd. So I was hanging out a few weeks and like helping to produce stuff, and kind of just like had Vince's ear, and people were like, who's this fucking guy? Half the people thought I was like a cousin or dating Stephanie or something. Why walking into Vince's office on the road? And then I was like, well, this has been fun, but I'm leaving and going to California, like I wanted. And Vince Russo said the week before, like, just go to TV next week, because next week was Meadowlands and Madison, I think.
So maybe he had an inkling.
Oh, beyond an inkling. Yeah. In fact, we got to have him on today because I haven't really nailed this down. But he said, just go to TV next week, which I think was actually Jersey and Meadowlands, Raw, SmackDown. And I was like, well, just go one more week. And then that next week went in and met Vince and Shane, and he's like, Russo and Ferrara are gone. We got no show. So that was like, we sat down and like wrote the show on a yellow pad. Russo says he left the show, which I'm sure he did, or whatever. It doesn't matter. But that was funny because Vince was like, anything you came up with Vince was like, that's great. And then I actually, like, in the production meeting, he's like, you tell him about the shows, and people are like, who the fuck is this guy fucking quasi running the production meeting? So it was very, very odd time, but it also goes to show you, like, the machine wouldn't stop. You know what I mean? They could have got an animated chipmunk to be like, and the next match, and it would have fucking worked. So I'm always trying to, play it down in that sense. But I remember just pre something or other, you and I think just connecting, like you were saying, we were watching, which is still our dumb inside joke, some minor league hockey arena, and there's the Brabham Cup. There was like this thing, Brabham Cup winners, and we were just standing there, and we were just like, Brabham Cup? That's a fucking worst name of a fucking championship I've ever heard. The Brabham Cup? Who's fucking Brabham? Yeah. So that became our greeting, Brabham. And then I would just say dumb shit like, how about you steal the Brabham Cup? Well, oh yeah, or whatever. Just fucking we just hit it off like.
And then over the years, we would just send each other random texts. Brabham Cup, and you said Gwen actually found a photo of it and texted it to me.
Yeah.
And it's stuff like that I appreciate, because I could be having a crap day, and you just look at the phone and then just pop and just be happy.
Yeah.
I remember connecting with being a big fan of Conan O'Brien, as my wife is as well, and You tell me really cool stories about like when Entwistle from the Who came on and
Oh,
guy tried to jump and run over and the security tackles him and he walks over, casually grabs a piece of paper, signs it, and gives it back to the guy as he's being kicked out.
well, it's what it was. Is it's fucking so yeah. John Entwistle's sitting in with the band, and there was a fucking fanatic fan who was, and I guess Entwistle had a CD out or something, and so there was a studio audience, and there was like their security. The show ends, you know, and they're like, "Bam!" The music's playing, and Entwistle was like the last guest, kind of talking with Conan. And they're coming out, and there's a couple double doors there, and the fans are there. And this fucking guy breaks by fucking security, and then security's like, "Who the fuck is this?" He's just a guy trying to get a signature from Entwistle on a fucking CD. So he goes up there, and he's like, his hands like this, and the security's like tackling him, and I'm actually pinned by the wall, and this guy's got this fucking CD, and fucking Entwistle walks over, grabs the CD as cops are struggling with him, the security and me, and he fucking, it's so unbelievable. He writes it with the fucking guys had the pen ready, and he writes, "Sorry, John Entwistle," and then he just goes, "Shall I go around the back?" And then I'm in that moment, I'm helping to peel this guy's hands off. This guy's like, ah. And then I realized in that moment, like, holy fuck, John Entwistle's like 40 years of shit he's seen. This is alarming moment number 9002. I'm in the fucking Who, for fuck's sake. But it just like, I was like, it was like the coolest move ever. Just
the guy who toured with Keith Moon of all people.
Yeah. Just like, yeah. That was so cool. And I just remember he had his handler. He had that big bass with the head on the bass is like this big.
Yeah.
And he just like, and was funny also. He sat in with the band. He didn't fucking rehearse, you know, and just like, so he just played all the ins and outs of commercial. And they play all kinds of shit. And he just kind of like, you know, they had this kind of conversation. Yeah, I don't know, whatever. I'll just watch it. And he's like, well, any keys you want to play? Yeah, well, you know, this and that. And he would just like, it was fucking so great. I sat there that whole show. The commercial breaks were the best because the band would play something and he'd just like, boom, you know, just fucking fly all over it. And I was just like,
called it in the ring, pal.
Call it in the ring, pal. Yeah, exactly. And I was almost like, fuck, I kind of like joked, like, you should just cut the fucking comedy out of this show. Just air the fucking commercial breaks.
Yeah.
It's fucking John and magic moment. So.
Yeah, me and you bonded. That's like one of our bonding stories as well, besides Brabham. But yeah.
And then for the audience out there, anyone who likes that story, great. If not, don't watch the podcast. No, just kidding.
Wait,
I always say if you like it, tell a friend. If you hate it, tell an enemy.
There you go. Oh, but yeah.
Also, one of the more memorable moments in your WWE run, although I think this was more in the Russo run, was you were Goldust lackey as Blue Dust. I remember, and it was kind of like Goldust was taking on the Raven role, and you were almost like the Stevie Richards in the sense that he was like knocking you down you were just trying to like fit in.
Well, that came out of self-preservation, because I had debuted for WWE November of '98 in Philly, and then I was, they inducted me into the Job Squad, and I was doing matches with the Job Squad, but it looked like the whispers were the Job Squad was going to be split up, and I was like, what am I going to do, right? So there was a moment where they had me actually got to do play-by-play on Sunday Night Heat. They had me go out. It was me, Kevin Kelly, and Shane McMahon. And it was for Al Snow's match, and Goldust comes out and steals Al Snow's head. I'm like, they were doing the thing with Al and Goldust. So it popped in my head. I was like, well, you know what? In ECW, I was Blue Dust, I'm having this thought. So I go up to Russo, I go, hey, Vince, I got this idea. Let me know what you think. I was Blue Dust in ECW. Goldust just stole Al Snow's head. Goldust plays mind games with people. What if me, Al Snow's partner in the Job Squad, brings back Blue Dust to play head games with Goldust in order to get Al Snow's head back? Using his own mind games against him to get Al Snow's head back. And Vince is talking, listening, chewing his gum, and he's like, yeah, all right, yeah. And he walks off and he goes, yeah, we're going to do that. And that became the thing. And Had a mini feud with Goldust, and we had a match at St. Valentine's Day Massacre um, in Memphis, which amazingly people still tell me people still talk to me about that match. And the thing about that match is Dustin's back was so torn up that it was like delicate of like what we could do and could not do. So I did a lot of things like you normally don't do on pay-per-view, like roll out a ring and powder, act like you're leaving,
right,
kind of thing. And he came and grabbed me and threw me back in, and just big sell his moves. And but then that started winding down. He beat me at St. Valentine's Day Massacre, and then out of nowhere they just kind of started pairing us. Look at these two misfits.
yeah.
What goes better, to put two misfits together,
And even just the basics of, it may sound ridiculous, but just like gold dust, blue dust. It's just sometimes that basic like thing is like, you'll remember. Oh, it's just so odd and fucking off the wall, but like, gold color, blue color. Makes,
In general, those like you were just reminding me of the blue parodies in ECW. They were always such a highlight too. Like you guys did the Freebirds, Kiss, and all this stuff because it was so unlike. Like ECW was so serious a lot of the time that you really stuck out, and it was accepted. Like the crowd could have shit on the comedy, but they liked the little change of pace.
We brought a moment of levity amongst all the chaos. This guy just went through a table. This guy just got thrown off a scaffold. Here's the dog and pony show. Dun, 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 dun. And
And there's just something was so good about like, because sometimes that's tricky in fucking comedy when you're like, someone's like, I'm trying to be funny, that's not working. But you guys are just so oddly left. And then there's this blue, just that everything has a blue theme was just so fucking like head scratching in a good way. You know what I mean? So no one could be like, that's just, they're trying to do this and that's not working. It's dumb. At its worst, people would be like this, like, the fuck is that all about? Which is a good thing, because they could be at least like, that's fucking weird, and you that momentum of that always, and to this day, it's got some like weird staying power to be like, it's kind of like the prison weird. I was like, okay, that guy, what about that guy? Like, don't fuck with him. He's too weird.
Yeah.
Something like that.
There was like, and that was the beauty of our characters is like we could do anything. Like even if we made a mistake, people thought it was planned.
Right.
I was Blue Dust in ECW when Stevie was Baron von Raschke, but he was Baron von Stevie.
Yeah.
And he's wearing this bald cap over his long hair, and the bald cap kept riding up and popping off his head, and he would grab it, put it back on, and the crowd would just laugh at that, thinking that we had planned it, and just, any mistake we could, goof off and make a mistake or just do whatever, and people would be like, oh, that's just meanie,
And you guys, and you especially, you guys, you have, which I always like try to tell a lot of guys, whatever, the art of the sell. If you can sell, because there's a thing in wrestling, I was like, I gotta get my shit in. I gotta get my shit in. It's an old phrase where like, I gotta get my moves in. But if you're fucking so entertaining selling, it doesn't matter. You're getting your shit in selling. And I've seen things where like, the other guy's getting his shit in, but the person selling is getting more over. That's very magical, smart staying power thing to have, is the art of the entertaining sell.
It's just, you got to drop a little bit of ego and just know that somebody can't shine if another person isn't willing to sell for him. Another person can't get heat if the baby face isn't willing to sell for him. And it's all about selling and facials. I tell everybody, young guys, what do I got to do? I teach them, play to the camera. This is your money maker right here.
Yeah.
Emotions. I borrowed a little bit from like, one of my favorite people to, emulate is George Carlin. He's like one of my favorite comedians. And he'd always be like, just, and I was like, a lot of my, stuff, the Blue Meanie faces. That's you imitate my grandfather who, would look over at me in the crib and go, and I always had that thought in my head. And I was like, so when I do the meanie face, it's like a tribute to my grandfather and this is selling. And,
You're right. The facial. In fact, George Carlin, I just watched a thing the other day when he says, like, did you hear 70% of Americans believe in angels? And then he made that face like he's having a stroke. Like, I can't like fucking get over that. Yeah,
he's talking about stuff incredible. In his fridge, and he's like, you know, that part of the tomato, it's like the end of the egg, and you know it's not the end of the egg, it's the beginning of a chicken. It's hen. Bleep. And he goes,
yeah.
You know, just I don't want to get you kicked off YouTube or anything without finishing that joke, but you know, just
right.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of pro wrestling. You can find inspirations from anywhere. You know, I don't know how many times I've heard Raven use quote song lyrics in his promo, and
yeah.
There was a promo we're doing in the park, and he's sitting there. He's like, "Scars are souvenirs, and the past is never far." It's like, did you just quote the fucking Goo Goo Dolls?
Fucking why not? Yeah.
Jake the Snake used to quote, you know, Led Zeppelin lyrics. You know?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Just you take a little bit of a line from something that everybody knows, but when they hear it, they don't realize what they're hearing. They go, "Oh man, that's deep." You know,
yeah.
Just you know.
Yeah, you gotta nail some kind of thing and do it over and over. We had Will Sasso on the other day breaking down.
I love him.
How fucking Hulk Hogan's promos worked, and he'd always say like, "Yeah, well, one thing you start over here, dude, and then you got something over here, and then it's in the middle, dude." So, so his whole thing is like, it didn't matter what he said; he just had that template, you know. But like, yeah.
And that's Hulk Hogan, brother.
Yeah, dude. Well, I don't know about that, dude.
Well, the Brabham Cup, brother.
Yeah, the Brab. You got your Stanley Cup over here, dude. And then you got your Vince Lombardi. But you got the one that really matters is Brabham, dude.
That's Brabham, brother.
Yeah.
So quickly, let's talk about, you know, after 2001, 2002, the whole wrestling landscape changes. It's honestly a very depressing time to be a wrestling fan.
And
very sad. I'm sure even as a wrestler, right? There's not a lot of work has dried up. A lot of, and so I feel like in Philly there was like a turf war of like who could establish the new promotion. I feel like Ring of Honor was starting up. Was it CZW or I think like XPW? Like CZW.
This is where you need to take a big drink of water because this is bringing up some tough stuff for you. Yeah. But then, talk about the promotions you started. Hold on.
But then you said, you know what? I'll do something, and you did 3PW.
Yeah, I got fired by WWE, got released, and you go to. You know, I could went to WCW or ECW, and I chose ECW because I figured, you know, it's like choosing the Titanic versus the Hindenburg. You know, which one's going down quicker? You know, it's like if I'm going to go down, I'll go down with my friends. And then ECW closes, WCW closes, and you know, Mick Foley had always told me, if you get fired from, you know, released from WWE and you go out in the Indies, you can have a good 5-6 year career. You know, just you know, in merch. Right. So. You know, the moment where I get released by WWF, that was supposed to be my heyday. Former WWE superstar. They could put former WWE on all the posters.
Yeah.
Well, now you got this whole influx of talent from ECW and WCW that's ready, and you're just fighting for spots on cards. You know,
right.
I'm seeing like indie promoters get limos for like WCW guys and stuff like that. I was like, well, I guess I can get my fucking my I'm asking for. You know.
Yeah. Time to get the alternator back in that Aspen.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, man, there's just like this void in Philly. ECW was done. There's like void in the Philly wrestling scene. You know, the ECW arena was empty. I was like, you know, and I had a
blue light bulb went off on your head.
Yeah, blue light bulb. And we knew some guy who says there's a guy named Steve. He was talking about doing. He came up to me. He's like, this guy wants me to buy his independent wrestling promotion. I went, what? I was like, okay, what exactly do you get when you buy an independent wrestling promotion?
Oh, a ring, if you're lucky.
Yeah, 3 letters.
Yeah,
dude,
exactly.
Start your own thing. And I had always, you know,
Well, you heard the famous, not to cut you off for a second,
Sure.
Jerry Lawler sold USWA, I believe, for like a huge amount of money. And then the guy that bought it was like, so what is this actually? Like, well, is there talent roster and contracts? No, it's, you know what I mean? It was kind of like, and then he sued, I know, to be like, because he was an idiot. He'd be like, I bought this thing for this amount of money. It turns out, you know, devoid of like the TV contracts and stuff, like, you're right. I bought 4 letters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, well, and it was like 10 grand or something. I was like, dude, start your own thing. You remember Chemo, right?
Of course.
And Joe San.
Chemo was a 300 plus pound Hawaiian who had a huge tattoo of a crucifix on his back and used to come and was very Christian. He used to come in with a cross, I believe, in some of the.
He would carry the crucifix. I mean, the crucifix there, and he had his I don't know if he was a manager or a trainer, Joe San.
Right.
And Al said, you know, you're doing those early UFCs. Everybody fly into one town, meet up, and then take that one flight to wherever it was, Oklahoma or whatever.
Well, we got to remember back then, Senator McCain was trying to shut it down, and it was also sometimes they would be like, "It's in Oklahoma, no, it's in Puerto Rico," or they were always circumventing some kind of, you know,
the athletic commissions.
Yeah.
And McCain called it human cockfighting.
Yeah,
I think that was the headline. But it was after one of the UFCs, and they're on that flight where everybody's together before they disperse. And Chemo and Joe San are on the plane. They're like, man, I would love if this plane just crashed and I could just meet my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And everybody on the plane is like, what the hell? It's just like, hey, oh man, if this plane went down, meet my Lord and Savior Jesus and all this, and they're going on, and you know, flight attendants like, hey, can you dial it back a little bit, you know? And
it's not like fucking goofball wrestlers going off. It's a guy's got a crucifix tattoo on his face. Like he's
invested. And he said there's one point they're flying and the plane is like this, and they went whoop, whoop, and everybody looked back at Chemo and Joe San there. They're just like they're like clawing onto their seats, like, do you want to meet him now?
Yeah,
you know, kind of thing. And they shut up about that whole I want the plane to crash kind of thing. You know? I don't know why you talk about early UFC, and that just reminded me of that story. And I don't think I've ever told that story, but it's
that's funny. Yeah.
Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. Crazy days. Back to your promotional horror story.
What I call those years my dark years, because it was like cool, but kind of crappy. You know, we're running shows, but it's just like I dedicate my life, I dedicate a lot of time to 3PW, and in the meantime, my actual independent wrestling career kind of suffered because I can't take a booking on the weekend because I'm flying to town. I can't take a booking here because I got to print the tickets, number the tickets, cut the tickets out, you know.
And whether the promotion is small or big, same amount of headaches, just maybe not as many dollar signs behind it, but you know.
Yeah, it's exactly. And I've heard Vince say that in some ways he regretted buying WCW, you know, because it killed that creative spark.
Yeah. Well, the thing I thought, you know, and even talked about this previously before, they were like, because it was kind of seemingly like an inevitability. It's like, yeah, Shane should go run WCW. But when you run it, I mean, seed it for like 2 years, ignore each other, and then, you know, go for the future super. But it never could do it because ultimately, you know, Vince, I think, just too much control. And ultimately what happened, I think, basically, here's what I think, or when he got ECW also was like, Raw is red, SmackDown's blue, and ECW is red. And there's an E in it. That's basically was the difference, you know what I mean? It just had no different flavor. You needed to be like, let someone, you know what I mean? Build towards a super card. It just went all through that template and that tone of WWE. You just felt it. So like, we're at EC. No, it's not ECW. It's a different theme song maybe, but it's just, you know.
I went to that first
at least make it
revival
green.
show.
Why did they make it green?
Yeah. Welcome to Blood Red. I went to
Yeah.
the ECW Arena. My first ECW Arena show was the ECW Revival in 2005. And my vivid memory was like 2 matches before the main event started. Paul Heyman came out because the crowd was getting so rowdy chanting, "This show sucks."
Yeah.
And
I was at that show as well.
yeah. And I remember he was just like, "Look, guys, I know it's not what you want, but if you keep supporting it, they'll let me do what I want." Which is not what you say to a Philly crowd.
Fuck no. That's just like.
and then my lasting memory, other than being stuck at the bus station for 3 hours after, because we had just missed the bus, my lasting memory was leaving and just these two Philly guys be like, "Fucking TNA was here last week and I paid $10 and it was a better show than this." You know, like that's my lasting memory of that show.
Yeah.
I always say WWE's ECW was like when Wayne's World, so Wayne and Garth Solder showed the Noah's Arcade in Wayne's World. They go to that first Wayne's World taping, and there's big lights, and Garth goes, "This is Wayne's basement, but this isn't Wayne's basement."
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Great comparison.
The new Wayne's World thing. Wayne's World, party time.
Yeah.
Excellent. And they're just like, "Oh my God, what are we getting into?" But yeah, the WWE ECW, what could have been? I was at that show and you just knew it was going to be a disaster because they run that disclaimer before the show. "This is a WWE proprietary event," blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And everybody booed the announcement, the pre-recorded announcement.
To me, I soured even when they started saying, the battle of the brands, and I'm like, don't use the word brand. That's like an inside corporate thing. And and they used to have the draft. I think they still have it, and that just never worked for me because it was like, it's all the same
extension.
company. Yeah, and then they're like, no, it's a kind of a different reshuffling, and then who's gonna go in the draft? You mean instead of Mondays, that guy's going to be seen on Thursday? No way! It fucking meant nothing to me. So
yeah, it was a little weird. And like even with what's going on now, I have to laugh because they're doing the new Bloodline, Bloodline 2.0, and I went on Twitter and I predicted. I was like, look, here's what I see. I see Roman coming back, reunites with the Usos, and they bring in Sami Zayn, OG Bloodline. Somebody goes, "But Sami Zayn's on Raw." What does that matter? It's pro wrestling.
Yeah,
anybody can do anything.
Yeah.
Sammy's on Raw. Who gives a shit? Yeah, you can do it. Yeah. Pro wrestling, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my God, he can't show up on SmackDown because he's on Raw. Stop.
Yeah, wrestlers get boosts back in the day. Even like I'm tired of so and so, or you'd always see way back in the day WWF like, "No way, this guy from Mid-South is now at the WWF." Like you just get into me. To me, one of the greatest entrances of all time was Jericho.
Yes,
and Jericho, I always thought he was over whatever, but just that countdown, and then when he hit it, it wasn't even like I imagine like he wasn't a household name. But it just like he was a good enough where people were like, "Oh no way, it's the guy from there is now here," and then other people were probably like, "Who's that?" Because he's a guy that used to be here, just So that
building, I was there that night. That building shook. For Jericho's debut, that whole day was kind of cool. The day Jericho debuted, backstage like Snoop Dogg was just hanging out, and then Billy Corgan from the Smashing Pumpkins was hanging out, and here's Jericho. Oh, yeah. Oh, you start tonight? Oh, awesome. I was sitting in the TV room with Mark Henry, and we're waiting for it, and it happens. And like, you see the monitor, but you hear the muffled, in the background. And it just, when he stood there with, with the arms out, you just felt like the floor underneath your feet, just like rumble.
Yeah, it was a perfect.
And that's what I love about pro wrestling. That's what I love about pro wrestling. Moments like that where you just You feel the
Well, it's one of those, like, the best part of pro wrestling is the worst kept secret, where like everyone kind of knew it was Jericho, but it was never confirmed it was Jericho. You know, like all the rumor mill, like, oh, it's gonna be Jericho, it's gonna be oh, we don't know, but then like, oh, here it comes, is it Jericho? And then the big Jericho graphic, and like, it's what we wanted.
And it was that perfect time, and I always talk about it too. From the time I was there, there was dirt sheets, there was, but that was like a 10%. You know, like now I just think a lot of things would be like, we know that's just through the information. It's so much more, you know. Then it was like the smart marks, you know, the fans, and then like, you know, the smart marks would lead things, and it was like a perfect blend of insider intrigue and people, and you know, that's just the, like we were saying, I don't think crowds will, and this isn't trying to be an old timer or whatever, will be as hot. Just for the simple fact of like 20 people are, you know, like they're connected to the phones, you know, and that just, you don't see that whole, you know, people are just fucking dialed into the ring as much.
I always say, you know, I was watching like some old time wrestling, and I was like, the thing I miss about wrestling is flash bulbs on cameras.
Yes.
Yeah.
You knew a moment was a moment because everyone's taking and you see their flashes going ping, 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 ping. That meant people were invested in there.
Or like the classic Evel Knievel in midair.
Yeah.
And you know what's hilarious is it's idiotic because the fucking flash doesn't help you a fucking thing when you're shooting something fucking hundreds of yards away. It doesn't fucking matter. But you know, but it's those. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, something about it.
Yeah, that's how you knew a moment was a moment instantaneously, because everybody was like, "Oh, this is something cool," you know.
Yeah.
But you know, technology now is kind of killed it.
So let's wind it down. I do want to quickly discuss the ECW revival, like, because obviously you had a moment in the second One Night Stand,
yes,
where JBL took some punches at you, like some legit punches, and got you all bloody. And I remember this was like a really controversial moment backstage, because it was like the big, you know, there's an unspoken trust that you're not going to intentionally hurt another professional wrestler, and he intentionally hurt you, and there was heat on him. And what's so crazy to me, and like even then I thought was crazy, but now this would never happen, was it was like, all right, Meanie's gonna get you back, and the way we're gonna let you, you know, pay him back is by giving him the stiffest chair shot ever, unprotected to the head.
Well, the whole thing with JBL is unfortunate, because you know the before I even tell the story, we're great now. We're friends now.
Yeah, it's so long ago now. Yeah.
And there's a silver lining to this. Well, like a cherry on top to the story, but
there's always a silver lining in wrestling.
I was a fan of his. You know, like I would see him. I was like, man, you know, cowboy guy, kind of like a Stan Hansen type.
Mm-hmm.
He was with Dutch Mantel. I was like, that's awesome. You know, when I go there, you know, Axel Rotten's, you know, tell John, I said, hey, you know, him and Axel used to wrestle on Global Wrestling Federation. I go up to John, hey, Axel Rotten says hello. Oh, cool.
Sure. Out of all the wrestling I've seen in my life, one of the most brutal clothesline against who was the Portuguese Man of War, Madison Square Garden, somewhere around 95 or something. Just like, it was just like, oh my God. But go on.
This is still Russo era. We're in Seattle, and I just gone and taken my promo shots with the Richie, the photographer, you know, doing the photos. And Ed Ferrara walks up to me. And goes, I'm sorry. What are you talking about? He goes, sorry, we didn't have anybody else. You know, you were the last two. And I was like, what are you talking about? I hadn't seen the lineup sheet. And it was me and Gilbert versus the Acolytes. He's like, oh, it's you and Gilbert against Acolytes. I was like, okay. You know, I tried to approach. I legit, and like I'll do this to Ed when I see him. I go, sorry.
Yeah. It's you and it's you and a cartoon mouse versus Hitler and Stalin.
Yeah. So he's like, so go to try to find him, and you know, they didn't really seem like they're in the mood to talk. So I was like, all right. So we had the match, and they just road warriored us. They beat the shit out of us. I know Gilbert blacked out twice during the match, and I'm like, oh fuck, what did I do? What's wrong? What the fuck? So we had the match. You guys shake their hands afterwards, and it just became this thing where that started it off, and there's other things which I don't even want to bring up because we're cool now. So when I get released from WWE, I do an interview with OneWrestling.com. It's like, my time in WWE was awesome, but Bradshaw was a bully.
Mm-hmm.
I just say he bullied
and
me.
You're not the only person that said that, to be
Right.
fair, but yeah.
Right. And I heard stuff before I went there.
Just the only person stupid enough to say it in an interview.
Yeah. I put my name to it. Lesson learned, sir. But you know how wrestling is. One person says one thing, and then it's like the game of telephone or the grapevine. One person tells another person, tells a person, and by the time it got to John, I'm sure it was something completely different. So flash forward to One Night Stand.
Yeah. Meanie said you were a egg-sucking pedophile. What? Yeah.
No. So we get to One Night Stand, and I saw John that, hey, how you doing, John? Hey, Meanie, how you doing? And then we practiced that whole, face-off, whatever,
Right.
So we go to do it. It's live on pay-per-view, and you're just cutting promos. Hey, I'll kick your ass. And I yell at John, oh, man, whatever, And he just like looks at me. I'm like, oh, shit. Just like, I'm going to look over here. And like before the whole thing,
that's not the friendly look my grandfather used to give me when I was in the
yeah, that's not the meanie face. And before that, I was talking to one of the Bash, I think Danny Bash. I was like, hey, let's just pair off and you find out. I mean, when you're doing a schmaz, you always find talk to somebody. Hey, let's pair off and whatever. So I'm like, all right, I'm just going to go find Danny now. And then the schmaz happens. I find Danny, and boom, there's a punch right in the back of my head.
Ooh.
And 2 nights before, there was a ECW Arena show at the ECW Arena run by Shane Douglas and Jeremy Borash. Sandman had busted me open. I had to go to the hospital and get 8 staples in the back of my head. And as if it was, you couldn't have planned it any better. He punched me right on the staples. So if you see me, like you see me go and like grab my head because I turn around. He does like the hockey thing, shirt over the face, and so I was like, I'm not just going to stand there and take it. So I snatch a headlock. You get closer, so his punches aren't as hard, and you'll see my arm going like that. Throwing punches back, and ring clears out. I'm still kind of like, what the fuck,
Well, there's a one classic picture still from it. We should throw it up there where it's like you just got this look like, oh, he's pissed. You're just so pissed. You got blood coming down, and you're just like,
Steve Austin's and behind me on the mic, and I'm standing there like, what?
You're fucking hot. You could just see like, wow, yeah.
It happens. I peel off into a corner, and guys, one by one, people are coming up and looking at me like they see the blood. Benoit walks up to me. Tracy Smothers walks up to me. I'm like, JBL just shot on me. And then if you watch, there's a moment where Sandman puts his Singapore cane around John, and Tracy Smothers comes up and then
he's no pushover. Tracy Smothers was no pushover, was he?
He wrestled bears. There's footage on the internet of Tracy Smothers running high spots with a legit bear,
And it really was like a frat thing, it was WWE. Like, who are these fucking ECW guys coming in and trying to, take our spots or whatever?
Yeah. And so that happens. Bubba pulls him out. I'm in the ring. I'm just looking around like, well, probably my last time working in WWE, and I'm looking around, and I'm fucking dazed. And they had handed out beers. There's still beers there, for the beer bash, and I'm putting beer on my face and drinking the beer. And I get to the locker room, and Johnny Ace comes up to me. He's like, "Who told you can blade?" I went, first of all, I didn't blade. As like Bradshaw shot on me, and I gave him the Reader's Digest version right there of this, that, and the other thing goes back to 98. You know, he bullied me. He's like, that's unacceptable, you know? And I go, we're at the Hammerstein. I go down the hall. You either go left or right. And you go to the right, go down the steps to the dressing room, and there's John. He's like, you talked about me on the internet. I was like, dude, what the fuck? You know?
You're just getting misinformation blasted every which.
So I go down.
Who told you could cut your arm off? A fucking tractor cut it off. Fuck.
So they take me downstairs. I get stitched up, and I go up to the locker room. Get changed.
You get stitched on your staple.
Yeah.
I can't. There's a fucking. We'll take the staple out and stitch the fuck.
It's like a constellation. You know.
Yeah.
I have a lot of scars on top of my name and my head that have names to them. There's Terry Gordy. There's Sandman. But Terry Gordy I was Goldust, and Terry Gordy hardwayed me with a steel trash can. So, and that's what the first night I had Sabu crazy glue a wound shut for me.
Oh. the master of that.
That'll be part 2 of
Sabu learned it from reading history books, you know, back in the war, you know, somebody come back, they get they glue them shut and send them back out in the war.
Yeah. Oh, a guitar player thing too. Fucking, you know, like fucking guys are like, oh, I'm on the road and this will fucking never heal.
Yeah.
Fucking crazy glue it.
So yeah, Gordy trash can, boom, go to the back of the locker room. Doctor's like, you need stitches. And Sabu goes, well, you could use stitches, or I could crazy glue you. I went, crazy glue me. Another thing for my resume. You know, oh, Sabu crazy glued this wound shut. But
and if you use enough and it's that close and if it's on the scalp, you're fucking high for 40 minutes.
Pretty good. Pretty good. Wow. Pretty good. I'm standing there in the hallway, guy, like, whatever. Right. I'm just standing there. I'm standing right where Vince's gorilla position was. He had just a makeshift desk and monitor. I'm standing there. And then somebody got in between us and broke it up.
Right.
And then they take me down to where catering was, and their doctor stitches me up. And Earl Hebner comes and finds me and gives me an extra, doubles my pay right there. You know, they already pay me. Here's some more. So you knew that came right from the office.
Right.
And that was it. I drove there with John Finnegan, Jim Molyneux, and Francine. And they said on the way back to Philly, they were just going to stop off and take me to a hospital.
Right.
They said I started talking like incoherently because I guess once the adrenaline wears off and
wow,
we stopped to eat somewhere and I was just like loopy and there's just like, you should take him to a hospital kind of thing. I went home, woke up the next morning, come down the steps. My mom sees my face and she just winces. I'm just like, oh. And that's where I really got like super hot because, my mom's was the sweetest person on the planet. And, to see her reaction to my face. And that's why I kind of start doing like blogs about it. Like, this isn't right. We swear, we make a promise, not hurt each other and this, that, and the other thing.
Well, especially, and you got a potential concussion, and no guidance or whatever, extra pay, but you're not even supposed to be getting awake. They're supposed to wake you up every half hour or so, go to sleep. You know what I mean? Yeah. Thank God everything's fine.
I get a call from Tommy Dreamer. Hey, Meanie, we want to bring you back. This has nothing to do with the JBL thing. We were bringing the BWO back, which they had been talking. Nova had talked to me the afternoon of One Night Stand about he was in talent relations. Stevie was about to go from the show Velocity to SmackDown. Colors are blue and white. BWO is blue and white, and let's do it like a small little schmaz. So this propelled that. So I get to the building. He's like, "Oh, he promised me this has nothing to do with John." I was like, "All right." So they fly me from Philly to Sacramento. Again, yeah, of course
it does. Well, but yeah, it's the the straw that or the thing that put it over the top. no problem. That's
whatever it
business,
is.
right?
It's,
Fuck, you know.
let's see what this is. So I fly from Philly to Sacramento.
Yeah.
Show up at the building the next day, and I see Johnny Ace. He goes, "Hey, tonight you're working with Bradshaw. You're going to hit him with the moonsault. You pin him 1, 2, 3." I'm like, "What? Does John know about this?" Oh yeah, he knows this. I'm like, "Oh."
But this has nothing to do with the previous.
Bro, this is bad. So I'm walking around, and Triple H sees me. He's like, "You all right, man? You look a little worried." I was like, "Hey, man, I explained why. I was like, I think I'm being set up here, you know?" And Paul goes, "Give me 1 second." Triple H walks off and he comes back. He goes, "Come with me." I walk with him and we go into Vince's office. And, Vince is sitting there eating a steak and he's watching the dailies of Hogan Knows Best. So that's about to come out. He's watching, there's, Meanie, have a seat. So I go in his office and there's a couple leather couches in there and I go and sit down. And then, Vince comes in with Johnny Ace and Triple H and I plead my case. I was like, "Hey, I was here in 98. I felt like I was bullied and, I said so. And, one night stand happens and I come here and he says has nothing to do with John and I'm working John tonight. And what happens if, he shoots on me again?" And, Vince goes, "Meanie, I assure you, John does one thing to hurt you. You will be fired. You have my guarantee." All right, let's do this. So I go off and I'm standing around and JBL comes up and goes, "Want to go have a talk?" I went, "Sure." So we're walking and you've been to TV, there's signage, catering, seamstress, Vince's office, kayfabe. And as we're walking, I'm seeing less and less signage. Yeah. I'm just like, "Bro, we're going somewhere." I was like, if I walk into a room and there's plastic on the floor, I'm running. Just we walk into a room. There's this like meeting room or whatever you want to call it. I walk in. I walk right into the center of the room and turn around. Look, he turns the door, locks the door behind him. I'm like, here we go. He's like, he walks up. He goes, "We can either make fight or we can make money." I was like, "Brother, I never wanted to fight in the first place." I told him, I was like, "Look, I was always a fan of yours. You reminded me of Stan Hansen, this, that, and the other thing." And then I started listing off the things I listed, the Gilbert match, all these other things. There's things he would say, and he was he's using somebody else as a reference, but you knew he was talking about you, kind of thing. Like, and then I saw this big fat guy with funny hair. And I'm like, all right, well, he's talking about me. So he's like, "Oh, I don't remember any of that." But, and he's like, "Look, I'm sorry." And that's all I needed to hear,
Yeah.
We shook hands and we got together, went over the match, had the match. And it was supposed to be like a 12-minute match. And then somebody went long, so they had to trim the time down. So we were like, let's just start with the heat. I'll come in, you boot me, and I'll sell, and then, you throw a chair in the ring, I go grab you, give me the big boot, and then things happen. And here's the thing with that chair shot with Stevie, that was not planned. I know that for a fact. Stevie said, he even pleaded with John, "Hey, could you at least be on one knee when I give you or crouch down? Cause you're so tall." John's a big dude and Stevie's tall too, but he's like, "Can you at least crouch down so I hit you?" So he went to swing thinking he was going to get him with the seated chair and got him with the back thing. Total accident. And I didn't even know it was coming because he hit John with the chair. John spins around for the DDT that I'm supposed to give him. I give him the DDT. I look down and there's blood on my side. And I start, I'm like, "What?" But I knew I had to do the moonsault. So I went up, did the moonsault, go for the pin. Oh no, I saw the blood after the moonsault. I'm sorry. Moonsault, 1, 2, kick out. I look down, there's blood on me. I'm like, "Oh man, what the hell?" And then the match happens. Batista comes in, slam, pin 1, 2, 3, get to the back, and we're like, oh shit, you just hardweight John JBL.
This is a big rumor killer that it was an accident, because I always read it as like, that was a repin, that was a receipt, brother.
Here's the funny thing. John comes through. We're apologizing for he's like, John told us to go on the internet and say it was a shoot.
Nice.
He's like, just go on the internet and say you meant it. And I was like, I was going to get my lawyer, but my lawyer appeared in a form of a steel chair or whatever. Yeah, that's the quote I put out there and made it, put it out there like it was a shoot. And it was so much so that the Undertaker thought it was a shoot.
Oh, wow.
And Taker called John and goes, what about that chair shot? He's like, no, it was an accident. Like Taker thought like Stevie was taking, he thought he shot him. And to John's credit, he's like, no, it was an accident. Because, maybe wrestler's court or whatever, who knows, And John JBL squashed that, Stevie thing with the chair shot with Taker. Like, no, I swear it was, it was an accident.
Thank you so much for your like, this is actually the longest podcast we've done, but this has been so much fun information. And one little note I want to add, you mentioned how you were internet friends with Paul Bearer. Actually, I messaged with you when I was a teenager on AOL Instant Messenger. I don't know. I feel like maybe you had your screen name public or something. Like, I don't know how I got it. I didn't have any inside sources, but I remember we were messaging. I was doing websites at the time. I was trying to pitch you on an official website. And I remember I had just gotten into ECW and I was like, hey, I know this is a faux pas of a question, but like, is ECW like real? I remember, and I was like 14, 15 at the time, and you gave me the best answer where you didn't say yes or no, but you were like, hey man, like if those chair shots look like they really hurt, it's because they, like you can't perform that, you can't theater that. So it was a very like that always stuck with me that you were like, oh, this fucking dumbass.
Oh no, it's I always because at one point I was that kid.
Yeah.
We're going up to Craig DeGeorge at the WrestleMania 4 fan fest going, is wrestling real? Dude, thanks for having me. I'm sorry I'm a little bit of a jabberjaw, but
No, this was really great. We should have you back to do like one of our reviews. Yeah. But anyway, I was saying like you should come back on while we do one of our review episodes and like we talk about the show. That's going to do it for this edition of Tales from the Attitude Era.